Welcome. I hope you can see that I'm holding up, it's a little hard to see, Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me to remind you that you're reading part 2 of this book. And also, as you're doing part 2, you're learning about how Coates uses words in a particular way and that he redefines certain words by his use of them. So, for example, body, white, struggle, amongst others, Mecca. And you're going to see that you're part of some group work looking to look at the denotation and the connotation of those words. Denotation means dictionary definition. Connotation means the words associated with that. And you'll notice that this is a book that's full of surprises. For example, the cover, if you have a hard copy, has on it something that's sort of vaguely familiar. And when you look at it closer, you realize it's a slave sale piece of paper. And so that in the book itself, he's implying that what happened 400 years ago is still affecting the conversation he's having today in this letter to his son, to his 15-year-old son, which was written right as his son has come to realize that Michael Brown's death, there was something wrong with it. And again, you need to look at the allusions to look at what happened there and why that's such an epic moment. So there's a little bit of a compare contrast going on between Coates and his son, each experiencing a loss. And you'll learn more about that as you get into part 2, which you're reading this week. But also in Coates, he has all the epigraphs and he talks about certain words and he repeats them as he's explaining what they mean. In the opening scene, he's having a disconnect or a gap between himself and the interviewer about the meaning of the word body and why his body is something he concerns himself with. And as you read the book and start to think about what he means by that, you'll get a deeper understanding of Coates' intention for you to rethink certain words. And so this week's assignment is also to look at a definition essay. I'm going to click share screen and show you some things from the module regarding the assignment, and then I'll get into a PowerPoint that looks more deeply into the assignment itself and what is expected of you. So while you're reading Coates this week, you're also learning about this new definition essay assignment. And it's often called an extended definition essay, and like other rhetorical patterns, it's a way of analyzing and understanding information. There's many rhetorical modes: process, where you look at how the order of something unfolds; cause effect, where you look at the relationship of what causes what; and comparison contrast, where you're looking whether two things are more similar or more different, and many other modes of rhetoric. We're going to focus on the extended definition essay because you're imitating what Coates is doing in his book. The question or prompt is to select a short phrase or a word that has importance and meaning to you, which is perhaps sometimes misunderstood or misused by others around you or in the wider world. And this may be an essay that's in defense of a word, or perhaps an explanation of how that word could be better applied, or how it's misused. The choice could include a word or phrase that has multiple complex meanings, and you may, in that case, need to do what's called a classification, dividing it into its different components before focusing on one of them. You have to talk about the antonym, the opposite of the word, because we often learn through binaries: hot and cold, love and hate, summer and winter. And so looking at the antonym is an important part of understanding it, as well as synonyms and variations of the word. There's a funny video ahead on the word shit, which I included because it shows you all the different uses of that very versatile word. And I had a student write about that this year in a very effective way to communicate what an interesting phenomenon it is that word can be used as such a low insult and such a high compliment. And why is that one word can carry such opposite meanings. To do this essay, you're going to want to fill in this definition essay thinking worksheet, which asks you to look at what questions you're asking, what audience it's for, and what you think you're arguing. So make sure to take a look at that particular worksheet. You have some mini deadlines, and yet I'm only expecting you to turn in some of them. You'll turn in the intro and the outline, and you'll turn in the rough draft. But the brainstorming you're going to be doing on your own, even though it's one of the most important assignments there is. And also the filling in of a form about the Oxford English Dictionary, which I'll explain to you in a little bit. You're trying to write about 4 to 5 pages, double spaced, and you're trying to, in this essay, use the various rhetorical modes that I've just mentioned, and you're going to need to go to the Oxford English Dictionary in the library. I mentioned the Santa Monica Library sometimes because I do teach at 2 universities, but the Long Beach Library has the same OED, so I will go back and fix those. There's 2 examples here by students on definition essays that are very, very good. I would say this one on riot is one of the best ones I've received. And so you can take a look at it to get a sense of what it is you're trying to accomplish, of how she uses citations, and you'll even see a few of my comments that are embedded in the essay. Most importantly, you'll notice that there's a work cited that includes outside sources besides the OED. You are required to use the OED on this assignment. But other than that, you can use some other effective evidence that you find on the databases in the library. Make sure you read the database lecture and you get familiar with how to find things in that database. So you will be looking at how to use the OED and to create a in-text citation from that. By the way, there's a poetry break here that gives you a couple of examples of students presenting poetry that does the same kind of thing. In this case, the first one looks at the word stress, and the second one looks at the word perfect. The one perfect is a very famous poem and very well done. And you'll be talking and thinking about the word hidden intellectualism in the essay that I have you read, which is really a definition of the concept of street smarts and why we should pay more attention to street smarts. So going back in the module, I want to point out that you're going to be using the OED to look up your word. That's one of the mandates of this. Even though I'm not collecting it, you need to be as careful as you can with this part of the assignment. So you're going to log on to the website. You'll go to the Oxford English Dictionary. You will get this fillable form and fill it out for yourself so that you can help yourself with your intro paragraph. A lot of the information in this form may end up on your in your intro paragraph. And so I ask you on this form to examine the word roots, the various versions of the word, the antonym of the word, and also some sentence examples of the word. I'm sure you'll be able to connect to that when you link onto the site. It wasn't opening for me right now, so I moved on. Ultimately, the intro and the outline will be due on the 10th, and the rough draft is due on the 17th. So next week, and then you'll turn in the final paper on the 20th. So let me move into the PowerPoint about this workshop. And the only thing I would like to have shown you was, let me try one more time to show you the OED form, or at least the example I gave at the bottom. So you'll notice there's a student sample with the word multiculturalism. And I'm having trouble opening these things. So let me try one last time, and otherwise I will separately make sure it's working. it may be that something has to be fixed, but notice that I talk about all of the questions that are on the form. So you're looking at the word orthodox, for example. You're getting interesting facts from the etymology of the word. Ortho and doxology are meaning right in opinion, holding a right opinion. And the ancient Greek word comes back all the way to the 3rd or 4th century. The word comes from something that means opinion and glory. So this is a student who took the relevant definitions, not choosing the obsolete ones. Those can be interesting, picking right, correct, true in accordance with accepted or authoritatively established, and holding opinions or beliefs. So she's picked amongst the various choices a couple of definitions she wants to focus on. And she's got the citation from the citation generator, which I will show you on the OED, and the in-text citation, and then ultimately one exemplary sentence that came from the OED. You may or may not end up using this, and then synonyms and antonyms. And the idea that came to her from doing this work is, I'm interested in the concept of rightness in the opinion and how that plays out in religious groups. So ultimately, you're looking to, and I've included the SMC example of how to use the OED as well, so that you can link to that, because we don't have one at LBCC. We don't have a video on it. So here are the interesting facts from etymology, relevant definitions. You should try to find at least 3 that you want to look at. Additional parts of speech that might be adjectives, nouns, verbs, etc. And then correct citation form at MLA 8 or MLA 9, which is where we are right now. In-text citation, sample sentence, synonyms, antonyms, and ideas from the definition. So that's what you're looking to do. The other sample at the end of that page shows you the word multiculturalism laid out. So I'm going to move on from here to a PowerPoint, and I'll make that a separate video. Be right back with the PowerPoint on the definition essay.